Welcome everyone. Now we are going to take a look at very important module of our framework design, and that module is logger module. So that is what is going to be our agenda for this tutorial. Now first we should have a discussion about why do we need a logger, or why logging is important in our test cases or in our test suite. Typically what we do, we use a habit of console.write lines. So if we take a look at this scenario, I have put console.write line, which keeps on telling me what kind of operations my test is doing. Now let's run this test and we will see that here it will put up logs. So it opens the being zero site in Chrome browser and it will go and click the contact link on the top menu. So you'll see that in a short while it has gone and clicked the contact. Now if we take a look at the logs, it says okay, these first three lines of logs are coming from the Chrome driver. Then it says launched browser Chrome. That is what is written over here. Then it says navigating to this URL. This log that we have navigating to this URL, this is coming from actually our browser factory, the framework layer that we have in our module. So this framework layer that we have, this is the one which is logging the second message. Third message is also coming from the framework layer. Next we are writing a message here in our test logs, going to URL, then waiting for 3 seconds. This is coming from here, clicking testimonials link. Now we are finding it by link text. This message is again coming from the framework layer. And last but not the least, we are saying we are exiting the browser. Now if we look at this, there are 2 to 3 challenges that we can observe now. The first challenge is logs come from various sources. So in case we are using framework developed by someone else in our team, whatever logs that person would have written, they will be part of our test logs, and we will be kind of scratching our head to figure out why the hell these logs are showing up for me in my test logs. So first confusion happens because logs can be coming from any part of the project and we don't have a way to differentiate. Second problem in this approach is, since we are doing console.write line, let's imagine if our tests are being run in a central lab by someone else, or we have gone to the step of continuous integration and somebody is scheduling the test like Jenkins or Travis or TeamCity our team might be using. So these tests are triggered automatically and nightly runs happen. So when we come back to office, what we get to see is the test run has been scheduled and the run results have come out. Now if our tests have failed, then we need to look at the failures. We need to understand why the test case failed in the yesterday's run. So logs are very important tool for us to figure out the reason for the failure, because if somebody says these are the logs, and let's say if the logs were there till the point that we have gone to URL and finding by link text failed, let's say developer changed the menu link from contact to contact us, then this is the step that is going to fail, and through logs itself we can tell reason of failure. Third thing we can do with these logs is, if we have sufficient logs, whenever we are logging a defect, we are filing a bug, we are logging an issue onto the developer, we can attach our logs which give him more context of where and why the problem happened. And last thing, logging will be extensible. Tomorrow if developer asks for more information for any given failure that happens in lab, we can easily accommodate that as part of logging. Well, so those are the main reasons of using logging. Let's take a look. Console.write line is logging to console good enough. Right now we are logging to console, which is a bad thing when our tests are run separately in lab, because whatever test run happens there in lab, the log console.log will console write line, what it will do is all these logs will disappear because they are being logged onto the console. Once the test is over, these logs are gone forever. Now second point is, how much logging should we do? Logging is useful, but it slows down the application. So here in this case, if we see, we have sufficient amount of logs, like after every line we are doing the logging. Let's say tomorrow somebody comes and says, I want to run your test as part of the performance test suite. Now what will happen is, since we are logging a lot, these tests will have slow performance. Our test case logging will impact the performance numbers that are collected by the performance framework by running this test suite. So performance guy may come back with a guideline and say you need to reduce logging, you need to get rid of the logs, just keep the essential logs that are required only for performance. Great, so we talked about the reasons for why we need logging. It's a great debugging tool. It helps in failure investigation. It helps us gather information that will be useful for developer. Where do I log? We have talked about that logging to console is not good enough. Now, what destinations of logs are possible? We can write to a plain text file, then we can write to a CSV file, because if logs become bigger, we have to do an analysis, and we can use Excel as an analysis tool for our logs. Or we can also log it to database in case our logs are huge, so that we can do different forms of queries onto the database and we can figure out the reason of failures. We are talking about a scenario where a performance guy might want to run our test cases as a part of performance test suite. There he needs a flexibility to limit logging in an application. So all these 2 points, last 2 points that we talked about, where should I log, because a lot of logging destinations are possible, and if we want to configure the logging in application and runtime, because if somebody says restrict your logs, we should not be going and commenting the logs here, because that's a code change. How do we achieve something so that logs, our logging statements are there, but still at runtime we change some configuration setting and all the logs get disabled? So that is what we mean by configurable logging. So this was the context of why we should be logging and what is the use of the logging and what are our logging needs, what things we should keep in mind when we are designing the logging module of our framework. Next, we are going to take a quick look at the logging infrastructure, and we will see how we can achieve all this very easily.